really interesting thing, actually, because we start off life in the womb, and it's this aquatic environment, and we're in this fetal curve, and we're just doing this very small pulsing. And in fact, I was hoping to get some nice fish movement videos, but I haven't found any yet. So I'm going to use just a book. See that picture of a cell there, and the arrows representing a direction of this pulse, goes from the side, and then that relaxes and it goes up, and then, that keeps going until the cell, the pulsing gets so big that it actually splits in two.
Ah.
And, so we have this, right at the cellular level, it's all fluid, it has this membrane within it. And, it's right at the heart of how we actually develop and grow. And this is a great book, Emotional Anatomy by, it's in reverse, isn't it? Emotional Anatomy by Stanley Kellerman. He's one of the people that brought Feldenkrais to America in the 70s.
It wasn't in reverse. It was fine. It wasn't reversed. It was fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. He's got this theory of us, being like a series of pumps and pouches. The human body is organized, and then he explores how different experiences in life, or wrong way, can influence the way the body is shaped and be deformed in that way. And he's defined all these archetypes and body types. Quite an interesting book, but the pictures are wonderful. But now, what's the one I want to show you? Yes, this baby is eating machine full of all these pumps and things. The very earliest form of life, of animal life, is a plant that laid down. They've found fossils of it. It's just, and there's these lines where it's eaten in the rock. So it's a mouth at one end and anus at the other, and it just creeps around, finding food. And we're still the same, just we're standing up now. But it's funny that, when we start off, we're, cells divide, and then they keep on dividing, and eventually we become this two discs with a notch at either end. And then they fold around into each other, and it forms these three layers, which are the mesoderm, the ectoderm, and the endoderm. Endoderm is the is the gut. The mesoderm is muscle and bone, and the ectoderm is skin and nervous tissue. And this disc pulsates. It moves side to side. Same sort of movement that's going on with the cells, but this one divides up not into two, but into 55 segments. And in each segment, there's a little bit of muscle, a little bit of bone, a little bit of skin. A lot of the segments drop off. And it's just an absolutely amazing story. But when you look at our actual, we grow, we come out of the womb really early, and we need to be supported. We're completely helpless compared to a mountain goat that pretty soon can be jumping up and down the cliffs along with its parent, with his mother. We need all this time, and that's because the brain's so big. Mothers wouldn't survive childbirth. So we have to grow, which you probably already know. But it's really interesting if you look at the stages of our development. In the womb, when we're in this aquatic environment, we can't move much, and we're doing all these fish movements. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. Oh, in fact, I have bigger ones. And then our limbs get a little bit bigger, and we our center shifts. Actually, it's interesting. You look at a fish here. Just the way the body is arranged, doesn't have limbs, and the center, the strength of the fish is more, up toward the chest. Interesting thing. When we start to develop limbs, then the center shifts down toward the pelvis. And the tail. Oh, next week we'll find out how the glory of having a tail. And then, when we start crawling, it's a bit like a quadruped. And then, we become monkeys who start to use our upper limb, and then, get to this stage where we are now, where we, can then stand up on our own 2 feet and walk. And I once worked with a woman who was full of energy, but had all sorts of problems in her body. Turns out she never crawled. And it just seemed really odd, because she was so robust and so, active. She just didn't seem like someone who, because she wasn't terribly good at sport, or, and didn't do much physically. But we started working through some of these developmental stages she'd missed, got her crawling, and she went through the different stages of crawling, which we'll begin with next week. And she became, found she really enjoyed it. She then joined a basketball team and found she was really good at it. And then this team went on, and they became they won the premiership this year. And so she said she was in her 50s, and, this complete change from not being physical to discovering, actually, I really like this. So that's one of the opportunities of exploring developmental movement.
Oh, can I?
Sorry, go on, Lavender.
David?
Yeah.
Well, I just recently discovered that I have a tongue tie. And so I spoke to my mum, and I didn't breastfeed. So the amount of compensation and efforting that went on, because I always felt like when I spoke, it was an effort, like I was getting up over a hill, and I thought it was some sort of, me going, no, shouldn't say that. So I would often not say things because it was difficult. I mean, I couldn't swallow tablets. So I've been exploring that and having lessons with speech and so forth. So
wow,
I can understand that it's quite bizarre, and how we adapt and shift and use more effort in order to get the job done.
Yeah. Okay, mate. Well, okay, this class is for you today. You'll see why when we get to it.
Are we suckling?
No, we're not suckling. It's a different take, but you'll get the drift.
Yeah, because when I came to the first ATM class with you, and we did all that aquatic stuff, and you talked about the back of the throat and the space, and I was just weeping. And what I heard was, thank you for finally acknowledging us. Like the cells were screaming out. So it's excellent.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. Oh, goodness me, 9:43. So we better get going. So yes, okay, so today, the world of the fish. I'll just mute you all. Good. That. Lovely. And pin my video so you can see. Great. So look, come and lie down on the floor. It's very bright there. Yeah, come and lie down on your back. I'll go further back. Yeah. Yeah, so lie here on your back. And pay attention to the different rhythms that are going on. The rhythm of your breath. Rhythm of your heart. And the rhythm of slowing down. You can notice as those tensions that are associated with getting yourself to lying on the floor now slowly start to soften and let go. So 3 layers in our body. The mesoderm, muscle and bone. The ectoderm, the nervous tissue and skin. And the endoderm, the gut. So sense within you now the feelings within you. And imagine for a moment that you're a fish, gently swimming through water. So, you know, they have a tail fin. Could you imagine you have a tail fin extending out from your pelvis? Moving side to side. So move your pelvis side to side. And in such a way that you could sweep this tail fin slowly from side to gently move yourself through water. And notice from the front of your pelvis to the back of the pelvis, you know, the whole shape of the tail, and make it a glorious tail, you know, exquisitely shaped. And if you were a fish, you'd have a mouth on the top of your head. You'd be moving toward something to eat or to chat with a friend, hang with a friend or family member. And you could notice the, you know, what's the quality of this fin movement like, this tail fin? Is it smooth and effortless, or, you know, is it a little bit jerky? Well, of course, your whole spine is involved, from your head right down to the tail. So just consider what's happening through your whole spine. Slow the movement down. You know, maybe if you did this movement with your breath, not breathing each time you do the movement with the pelvis, but just listening. In fact, stop. Just listen to your natural breath. Just the way it falls in and falls out. And then as you breathe in, move your tail fin in one direction. As you breathe out, move your tail fin in the other direction, just effortlessly. And of course, then it becomes easier to sense the whole torso moving. And you could notice, are you doing anything with your shoulders? You're pressing your shoulders into the floor or tightening between the shoulder blades. You don't need to. You could just let that soften and make it a smaller movement. And it's an interesting thing, when your pelvis sweeps across to one side as you breathe, maybe that hip reaches away a little bit. And you can imagine the fin pushing through the water and being bent back. So that side of your pelvis has to push down a little bit. You could probably feel one leg reaching away and the other leg lifting up as your pelvis moves side to side. Well, of course, your muscles and bones are driving a lot of this, or maybe it's the nervous system that's doing it. But what role does your gut have to play? It certainly gives you a sense of being filled in. Well, feel it, from your mouth through to the anus, the whole tube of your gut. Mouth and nose. And the interactive part of the gastrointestinal tract is the mouth and tongue, used for communication, tasting food, preparing the gut to receive food. So as you're moving your pelvis side to side, could you consider the shape of your sacrum swishing across the floor there, and maybe you can feel the sacrum sliding within the suit of skin, the whole pelvis sliding within the suit of skin. So the shape of your sacrum and the shape of your tongue. And move your tongue in a way that seems appropriate with the movement of your pelvis, with the movement of the tail fin. Maybe if you feel the width of your tongue, the width of the throat, the width of the whole inside of your body, moving you through the water like this. Does that enable you to feel like a fuller, more graceful fish? Well, leave that for a moment. Just rest there. You could be aware of your eyes. You know, are you tightening your eyes to concentrate? Could be aware of the visual field, you know, right around you, above you and below you. Maybe you could imagine your eyes where your ears are. That's what it's like for a fish. And then once again, continue moving the pelvis and your tongue side to side, effortlessly, you know, tiny movement with your breath, as if you're just casually moving through this glorious waterway. And could you now have a sense of what's happening in your rib cage? You know, when your pelvis is moving in one direction, what does your rib cage do? And now that you're thinking of your rib cage, what is your tongue doing? Is it sweeping side to side, or is it bunched up in some way? Leave that for a moment. Rest there. It's interesting when you consider a fish, it's, you know, bigger around the chest, isn't it? That's where the largest muscles are. Well, could you move your chest side to side? Feel it sliding within your suit of skin, just sliding it side to side. Rib cage goes side to side. And, you know, that's the interesting thing. You know, relax yourself as you're doing this, you know, in your shoulders and your neck. You don't really need very much at all, effort-wise, to move your rib cage side to side. It's like, you know, one shoulder pushes down just a little bit, and then the other shoulder pushes down to go in the other direction. You know, and if one shoulder is moving, the other one can relax completely. And maybe you can feel the way your rib cage moves inside the shoulder girdle. And what is happening through the spine? You know, if your rib cage is going side to side, you know, is your pelvis moving too? Slower fish have a, you know, bigger movement of their rib cage. You know, the fastest fish are a bit more stiff in the body, and so most of the movement occurs through the tail, but it's still driven through the whole spine. Now feel, as you're moving your rib cage over to one side, what happens through all the vertebrae. You know, consider your rib cage is going over to the right, how the spine is pulled over to the right, but the pelvis is still over to the left. And then go to the other side and just get a sense of the way this whole spine is being pulled side to side. And then if you get a bit fluid about it, you go side to side, you'll notice that there's this wave that passes through your body from your rib cage right down through the spine to your pelvis. And, you know, it's at that change of direction. When the rib cage changes direction, that's when the pelvis starts to move. And they're moving, you know, are they crossing in opposite directions, the pelvis and the rib cage? Well, of course they are. And but the thing is to feel that, we need to really soften to make this movement really small. And it may be helpful to allow your tongue to move again. And to allow your tongue to be soft. So just as your rib cage moves to the side and then gradually each vertebra is drawn along right down to the pelvis, so as your tongue moves, it moves from the back and sequentially moves across to the front. So this wave passes down your tongue, right from the back of the tongue down to the tip. And that's the beautiful thing, because the tongue sits on top of the entire gastrointestinal tract, on top of the larynx. And so it's the movement of the tongue is, being driven by this movement from deep within you, right within the pelvis. And that's the interesting thing, to notice, what is your tongue moving with? Is it moving with the pelvis or the rib cage? Probably, as you relax more, as you soften even more between the shoulder blades, you feel the pelvis will move, or the tongue will move with your pelvis. The whole spine can move effortlessly as you just cruise through this glorious waterway. And you may find as we continue that places that you brace yourself in the middle of the torso or your neck will be reflected in parts of your tongue. So as you relax through the torso, notice how your tongue and your jaw soften. And as your tongue and jaw and mouth soften, how that also enables you to soften through your torso. Well, gradually slow that movement down till it's barely perceptible. So you're just floating in this perfect place. And it's this lovely thing, being actually human, so that we can go through all these evolutionary stages. We could explore being a different type of fish, because a fish with a long body will have a different action. Some of them, like not a fish, I'm now talking about a mammal, but a dolphin or a whale, they have a tail that goes in the opposite direction. So what happens if you actually, can you make a fetal curve. You know, bring your knees into the air and your elbows towards your knee. You can even lift your head a little bit and roll yourself side to side to feel how your spine, if you lift your head and your legs toward each other, roll side to side, and the whole spine is like a C shape. It's all going in the one direction. You know, when we're in the womb, this is what it's like. We're just this round, beautiful shape that's able to do these tiny little movements. You know, you bring your knees toward each other and away from each other, pelvis toward each other and away from each other. And notice, in order to do that away from each other movement, your neck and your lower back bend. So come back to the middle, let your head and your arms and legs and pelvis down, and notice how your spine is now, rather than just a C shape, it's just like more like a spring. It's got these two other curves, these secondary curves in the neck and your lower back. And so your rib cage is curved down toward the floor, and the bottom of the spine, the sacrum, is curved down toward the floor, and the back of your head is curved down toward the floor. But your neck and your lower back curve up. Now try just lifting your rib cage just a little bit and then pressing it into the floor. You know, you may feel when you lift your rib cage, your shoulder blades come toward each other, and as the rib cage presses into the floor, the shoulder blades come apart. So just lifting the rib cage up and pressing it down. And once again, a tiny movement. But it's a really interesting thing. Where is the rib cage? You know, where does it begin and end? Where's the top of your rib cage? You know, the top of the rib cage, the base of your neck. When you lift the rib cage up, you're lifting the spine in your neck, the cervical spine. Can you feel that on each side of your neck? When you lift your rib cage, you lift the curve up from the bottom of the neck, and when you press the rib cage into the floor, you draw the bottom of the cervical spine down. And that's moving those 7 vertebrae in your neck. Feel that, lifting the rib cage up and down, how all the vertebrae in your neck lift. And of course, if you can make yourself very relaxed and make this movement very small, maybe you could be still enough to feel that your head is just lying there, and as you're moving your rib cage, you're moving the neck from below. And notice which direction you're moving the rib cage when you're tuning in like this. You know, is it straight up or is it over to one side? Just allow your rib cage to go wherever it wants to go. Notice the easy direction that would enable you to allow your head to be soft, your neck to be soft, so that you could experience the way the vertebrae in your neck are lifted when you lift your rib cage, or drawn down when you press your rib cage into the floor. And just pause for a minute. It's interesting thing, you know, what are you actually feeling? What are you thinking of when you're doing that? You know, I'm doing this here and I'm thinking of the back of my neck. You know, I'm just thinking of the back that's pressing into the floor and lifting up, and forgetting that my rib cage and my neck have a front. That my tongue is in my mouth. You know, I'm forgetting that I have a gut. So could you once again just consider your tongue, the width of your tongue and your jaw and your mouth and your nose, the curve of the front of your throat and the front of your rib cage. And once again, lift and then press down the rib cage, but this time considering the whole neck, the whole rib cage. That tiny movement and listening for what direction you want. It's easy to move your rib cage, but you know, when you consider the throat as well as the spine, when you consider the tongue and the larynx and the trachea and rib cage and heart, you know, does that give you a different sense of lifting your rib cage? Maybe it makes it easier to relax your eyes. And now still keeping the sense of your throat and tongue and lungs and heart, can you now think of your gut? You know, down in the torso, and lift your rib cage and press it into the floor in the gentlest possible way. But now notice what happens in the lower back, because when you're lifting the rib cage, you're also lifting the lower spine, the 5 vertebrae and the sacrum. They move. And when you draw the rib cage down into the ground, you flatten the upper part of the lumbar spine. And if you can allow your pelvis and your legs to be relaxed, maybe, you know, you can feel how each of those 5 vertebrae and the sacrum move when you draw your rib cage down or when you lift it up. And maybe you could, you know, now consider both. Well, you know, consider, yes, as you lift your rib cage up, that both the bottom of the neck and the top of the lower back are lifted. And when you press the rib cage down, the bottom of your neck and the top of the lower back press down. So feel that, the way moving your rib cage like this influences the whole spine. And you lift your rib cage, and you know, when you're lifting up the lower back and the neck like that, it makes the head and the pelvis roll away. And when your rib cage presses into the floor, as the pelvis and the head roll toward each other. Feel that pulsing and see how gently can you move, how accurately can you conform to where your rib cage wants to go, where your spine wants to go. So you can make this effortless, so that you could feel the movement of your pelvis, your sacrum and your pelvis and your head. And does it make it easier if you remember that you have a gut? You know, as you lift your rib cage, let your tongue lengthen out over the bottom lip. And then as your rib cage comes down, let your tongue come back in. And notice, you know, the shape of the tongue, the shape of the sacrum, the movement of the sacrum. Notice how your tongue is following your sacrum. So notice when your tongue comes out, your pelvis is rolling down. Imagine if you're a dolphin. When your pelvis is rolling down, that's when your tail fin goes whoosh. Think of that, being able to move through the water like a dolphin. And just as you think of the width of your tail, think of the width of your tongue. Lovely, leave that. Now, imagine once again you were a fish, with a vertical tail extending from the bottom of the middle of your pelvis. And, do the swimming action here. Just feel the way your rib cage and your pelvis undulate from side to side. Is that easier? Well, leave that. Could you roll over onto your stomach? Roll over onto your stomach for a moment. Have your head on your forehead. Now, if you can't have your head on your forehead, you can have it on your side, but do change side to side often. But if you can, have your forehead on your hands. You have the two hands on top of each other, and, your chin is tucked under. And just sense how it feels to lie here. You could move your rib cage side to side. It's a little bit easier here. Because of the position of our elbows. Side to side. And sense that movement through the spine, right down to the pelvis. You could think your eyes are where your ears are. Your mouth is at the top of your head and you're swimming along. So imagine a tail fin extending out of your pelvis, a beautiful tail fin. Imagine you're the most beautiful fish. Living in the most pristine environment. What does it feel like to be a fish? you know, there's a place that we have inside us where we have the loveliest feeling, the most glorious memories, or a sense of just feeling absolutely blissfully alive. And often we protect that place. You know, we layer it up with tensions and put it in a box, which is very clever of us because that, you know, enables us to survive. So, you know, when I suggest that, I'm not saying you dismantle that box. Leave it exactly where it is. Keep all your protections in place because they arrive there as a result, you know, your own logic puts them there. But you still have that feeling. No one else knows about it. It's just yours. Your particular sparkling experience of the joy of being. Notice where you feel that in your body. As you're moving your ribcage side to side, as your whole spine can undulate. And, you know, if you consider your gut, the belly lying on the floor as we're rolling side to side, or sorry, our rib cage and pelvis are moving side to side. Our spine is undulating and we're able to move through this peaceful water. You know, allow your tongue to move. And imagine as you're doing that, you know, there's that movement as the rib cage or as the pelvis moves to one side, that the whole spine is drawn along and it goes one vertebra at a time, sweeps in a wave through your body. And could you allow your tongue to move in a wave to reflect that? So, you know, by softening through your shoulders, removing any unnecessary effort. So the back of your tongue can relax. And it may be that, you know, you need to relax and slow the movement down in order to soften at the back of the tongue. And maybe if you think of the power of your pelvis, you know, from the back and the front of the pelvis, the whole length of your tail being able to push through the water in an easy way. That you could feel your tongue softening as well. And what if, you know, in that box where you have that glorious experience of being, that you were able to put a two-way mirror in there that meant that you could see out, but nothing else could see in. That you could look out on the world without being observed and bask in that glorious joy of being as you swim through this amazing landscape. And then leave that for a moment and just rest on your back. And think of being able to look out through those two-way mirrors so that nothing or no one could see in, but you could see out. Or you could control the permeability of it, actually, whichever way you felt appropriate with. But being able to look out on the world from that glorious experience of being. Maybe do that fish movement side to side undulation here. See how that is. Maybe, try the dolphin movement now. Up and down with the rib cage. It's a different pulsing. And scent. The tail of a dolphin is amazing. I've been to one of those SeaWorld places and was a dolphin right up next to me, and then it just turned and then leapt out of the water in the opposite direction. Turned in its own size, in its own place, and then just pushed itself out of the water. I mean, the most amazing capacity to move and twist. Most extraordinary spinal movement distributed evenly through the whole body. And think of the whole gut. Maybe you could, as your rib cage lifts and your pelvis rolls down, let your tongue extend over the bottom lip. So you think of the width of your body. And the length, because when you're extending like this, the whole body lengthens, including the gut now as your tongue extends forward. And now could you roll over onto your stomach again? Roll over onto your stomach, have your hands on your forehead on your hands. Just take a moment to settle here. go into that gentle fish movement with the vertical tail, sensing that undulation through your spine. And you know, you can refine that undulation by softening. You know, wherever you're holding on to the, you know, an arm or a leg or one side of your neck or your rib cage, you know, you're probably reducing the smoothness of this wave. So do less. You know, and think of the whole body being able to move. You know, so let your tongue move as well. And of course, the good thing about having a two-way mirror on that joyous place within you is, of course, you can see further. You can see what's going on. Even if there was danger, you know, you'd be able to take evasive action earlier. So you can be more relaxed. Now, once again, leave that. Let's go back to that dolphin movement. Lift your rib cage up and down just a little bit. That's different on the belly, isn't it? You know, you can feel the gut for a start. The whole gut right down to your pelvis. When you lift the rib cage up, you know, lift it a little bit more perhaps. You feel your head gets drawn under you and your pelvis gets drawn under you. And when the rib cage presses down into the floor, the pelvis and the head lift a little bit. You know, feel that movement on the neck and the lower back. And once again, look for the easiest direction. Where can you move your rib cage that feels easy? It may not be straight up and down. It might be over to one side. Go slowly enough that you can feel how can you most easily slip and slide here. And maybe, you know, as you're raising and lowering the rib cage like this, you know, when you lift the rib cage, the head and the pelvis move toward each other. It's like you're shortening through the gut. And when your rib cage presses down, the pelvis and your head move away. You know, you're pressing the top of the lower back and the bottom of the neck into the floor, and that's pushing the other end of it up. Feel that. Feel the action through the neck and the lower back. As the rib cage goes down, it pushes the bottom of the neck down, so it's lifting the top of the neck up. And as it lifts up, it lifts the base of the neck and the top of the neck goes down. You know, how's that affect your head? You know, make it a small movement so it's no effort. And then you can relax your jaw and your tongue. You know, and as your rib cage presses into the floor, maybe your tongue could extend forward because the gut is lengthening. And as you lift the rib cage, the tongue could draw into your mouth. And of course, as soon as you start using the tongue, maybe that's going to make you think of your pelvis and your sacrum, because the tongue will be mirroring the direction that the sacrum is moving. And feel, you know, when you're pressing the rib cage into the floor, it's pushing the upper part of the lumbar spine down into the ground, which is lifting the bottom part up. So it's lifting the sacrum. And in fact, if you want, you know, you're pressing the rib cage into the floor, the lower half of the rib cage, you could lift your head and your pelvis. And as your pelvis lifts, and notice your sacrum is lifting, move the tongue with the sacrum. So as the sacrum comes down, tongue comes inside the mouth. As you lift the sacrum, the tongue extends out over the bottom lip. And feel how the whole gut lengthens. And the width of it. The glorious width of our body. That has this delightful experience of being in the middle. And maybe reduce the size of the movements again, but, you know, consider yourself like a dolphin. So this undulation through the spine, from the top down. And, you know, the action of your tail. So as your pelvis comes down, as your rib cage lifts, that means the tail fin is pushing down. And as your rib cage presses into the ground, it means your tail lifts. And of course, you have drive in both directions. So it can be effortless, you know, you don't have to go in any direction, and can be small. So, you know, you could really soften through your shoulder girdle, the sides of the rib cage. And then leave that and roll on your back. Well, could you lie on your side? Maybe interlace your fingers, place them behind your head. You know, so you can support your head there, have your legs comfortably bent. And in this position, could you move your rib cage backwards and forwards? Do this undulating movement of the spine, this dolphin movement. And now notice which direction your rib cage wants to move. It may not want to go forward and back. It may want to go in some other direction. It might want to go slightly up and down. Just listen and think, you know, where can you move your rib cage and your pelvis so that you have this wave right through your spine? Slow it down, you know, so the smallest movement, see, you just really small, so rather than just doing it quickly and hoping for the best, that you're going to find the wave through momentum, see if you can find a way of moving the rib cage slowly backwards and forwards. And it's a really nice thing here because, you know, if you have one shoulder on the ground, feel the way your rib cage can slide over that shoulder blade. and your collarbone. And just feel as your ribcage moves how each of the vertebrae in your neck and your lower back move, and how that movement translates to your head and your pelvis. Let your jaw relax. You could vary your position. You could roll over a little bit just onto your front, just a little bit. So you have a different part of your rib cage pressing on the floor. And now do this undulation through here. And consider that joy, that experience of joy of being in your safe place, perfectly protected, and now with an optional two-way mirror so that you can see out and you can choose who can see in, and just explore moving here. You could allow the rest of your body to move, and you could try a different direction. You could move onto your back a little bit, halfway, so you're just on the back corner of this side. And what we're looking for is this ease of movement, this effortless direction that you can move, so that you have a sense of being able to move the whole body. When your body extends, you could let your tongue extend out of your bottom lip. And when your rib cage goes back and you fold, you could let the tongue come back in. And you could roll over onto the other side. Try it on your back. You could let your legs go wherever they want to. It's the torso driving this movement, though. Try the other side. And wherever it feels good, it may be you're on the back corner on this side. And you find, how can you move your rib cage? It may not be straight ahead. It may be some particular direction that enables you to gather together the whole of your neck and the whole of your lower back in a way that it feels like you could make an effortless movement. You could roll onto the front corner here. And, let your jaw and your face go. Think of the whole of your body, the whole gut, all the muscle and bone, all the nervous tissue being able to participate in this glorious movement, in glorious water. And with this radiant experience of being. And you could roll side to side. If you're a dolphin, maybe you could be surfing. You could fly through the water and then launch yourself out and then come back and dive down back under. So you make it as easy as you can. Easy and effortless. And then leave that and lie on your back and rest. Sense the glory of being within you. You could try a couple of fish movements if you felt like it, just to feel the difference now on your back, that ability to undulate your spine and your tongue. And then leave that. Softness of your face, of your mouth and lips, your tongue and throat. Softness of your eyes. And then, in your own time, roll over onto your side and come up to stand. And sense how it is here. Right around you. How it feels when you have released your inner fish. And then try walking and notice how it is.